So Miami defeats Ole Miss 31-27, and I think Miami's going to win the national championship. I think at some point, when is it? I think this is time now where everyone's just like, Miami is just everyone says Miami is just a good football team. I was talking to my buddies about this. It's interesting that it seems like Miami for a while, there's a lot of, oh wells and yeah buts with Miami. I know they lost 2 games. But you look at they lost to Louisville. That was a good Louisville team, 9-4. They lost to SMU in overtime. I know SMU wasn't particularly great this year, but you look at Miami. It's just like that is a physical. They got talent at receiver, Malachi Tony, Mark Fletcher. They can run the ball. They can win the line of scrimmage. They kind of do what the Eagles do in college football now. Cristobal's kind of building what Nick Saban built at Alabama for the physical, bigger, stronger team, always winning the line of scrimmage, always having playmakers, always having speed, always having, tough guys. That gives you a chance in any game. You can just physically wear people down, kind of like, that's been the Eagles' philosophy last year in their route to a Super Bowl. If you're the bigger, physical, tougher team, but that's the thing, people doubting Miami. Notre Dame probably should have been in ahead of them in the playoffs, even though they beat Notre Dame. It's like, oh well, that was a nice win against Ohio State. It's a nice upset, or nice win, but I don't know. They beat Texas A&M, but they didn't look particularly well on offense. They only scored 1 touchdown. I think at this point, after that win against Ole Miss, against that team, against that quarterback and Chandler was playing hot, I think now it's time to really emphatically say that, Miami is a good football team and they're a legit national title contender. Obviously, they're in the national title contender, but I think a lot of people, even prior to this game, a lot of people were not ready to say, Miami is just, legitimately a really good football team. And I think Miami wins the national title. I think Indiana, Oregon, whoever they play is going to be tough, but I think it's just Miami's year because, Miami. There was one point early, before they lost to Louisville, a lot of people are saying that, Miami is just, Miami looks dominant. Like after that win, they beat Notre Dame and they were just kind of rolling for a while before they stumbled against Louisville, SMU in the middle of the year. There's one point people were like, it looked like we could be heading for an Ohio State Miami a rematch of the 2002 national championship. We ended up getting Miami Ohio State in the quarterfinal game, which ended up being Miami 9.5-point underdogs and them winning. So I think it's just time to say Miami is a really good football team. That's my pick to win the national title. Carson Beck just looks like a story. That looks like a team that's you kind of get this feel with a lot of teams, whatever sport, they kind of just feel like they have the heart of a champion. It just all the work comes together. Carson Beck talks about all the work they've put in and just, the way, you can see a hunger, in Miami and Cristobal. You can tell that, this season means something to him. Not that seasons don't mean, not that like, obviously every season means something to every coach, but like you can see Cristobal is like, you can tell that he's hungry. You can tell he's got something special with this team. And yeah, Malachi Tony, legitimate playmaker. So the way they built this Miami team, they've really built it to sustain success in the future and especially this year. And I think, if they do match up with Indiana, I think that'd be a heck of a matchup. But I think I think Miami could be too much for Indiana. You saw like Indiana didn't. I know they beat Ohio State, but they still. I don't think Indiana's quite there physically to match up with Miami. I think maybe they keep it a game, possibly, but I just don't think they have. They don't play physical enough. They don't have enough size. They don't have enough. They're just. I don't know. I don't think it's a great matchup, particularly for Indiana. Obviously, they still could play Oregon. Oregon, I think, would be a better matchup, but I just think Miami. The way they play, they just built they built a team as of right now that's just you can overwhelm you physically, and they can win a national title. No, they still are a game away, but yeah, Miami, that's my pick, and I was so impressed. What a game! I guess talked a little bit more about what a game last night. Back and forth, lean changes, incredible catch by Malachi Tony. I know it didn't count, but. And then besides the catch that didn't count, he just made a lot of plays in this game. Mark Fletcher, such a really good running back. Ruben Bain, a grown man in the defensive line, he's played well for them. He's one of their sack leaders. Mesidor coming back in that game, getting hurt. Mesidor, their leading sack leader. Two guys, they got a guy ejected. They had their other corner hurt, so they're down a couple corners. And then, with injuries, that's another testament to a good team is, Miami was able to overcome some injuries, the fourth quarter deficit when they scored with 18 seconds left. They were able to overcome some penalties. Really, the targeting call. So, yeah, Miami able to, that's another testament to a really good team being able to overcome some things that just didn't go your way. And then Carson Beck, being able to overcome, or Carson Beck, just his resiliency at the end, and his experience too. You've seen, whether it's Joe Burrow in 2019, you've seen a lot of national championships with experienced quarterbacks. Even what's another example? Last year, Ohio State with Will Howard was he the fifth-year senior. So experience at quarterback, obviously key in any level of sport, NFL, college, high school. But Carson Beck now a seventh-year senior, seventh year in college football, and he's playing like that. So Miami's my pick to win the national championship. Huge win. Credit to Ole Miss. They had a really good year. Trinidad Chambliss is a good player. So Ole Miss, my pick to win the national title. Nice win in the semifinals, getting it done in the Fiesta Bowl 31-27 over Ole Miss.